they're not a complete team, but I like the over here set at 7.5.
I still think I'm skittish on believing in the team as a whole. I think this will be a great team to bet overs on, when the defense is soft, but the offense can hang with just about anybody. But I don't know. I think maybe you could look at live betting a win total for the Seahawks team and hitting the under once they start the season with a really soft start. Because here's the thing. You look at the start of the schedule, it's the Broncos, it's the Patriots, they get the Dolphins at home, then the Lions and the Giants. So obviously there's some tough games thrown in there, but I do think it's a relatively easy start for the Seahawks team. But the question is, can you take advantage of an easy schedule to start the year when you have a first-year head coach? Because, Jenks, I have trouble kind of wanting to believe in first-year head coaches. I just think it's really tough, to get your game plan in place, to, get all the new faces in the building, and sometimes for some of these players to learn a new offensive scheme. So I don't know. I'm not super sold on the Seahawks team. I think one thing that I've noticed is that it's very easy to fall in love with all of these teams as we do these season previews.
No, that's true.
This is one team that I'm feeling pretty hesitant on. Like most of these teams, I can find something I really like. The Seahawks is not the case. Because even when you look at the receiving props, they have quite the trio. They have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba has looked really good in training camp. So I said to myself, okay, do we take the under on Tyler Lockett on his receiving yards? But it's already pretty low, 750.5. It would have been the lowest number that he's had in quite some time, I think since the year 2017. But I do think his production goes down this year as Jackson Smith and Jigba starts to take away some of those targets. I think we see a rise from DK Metcalf as well. I think he's going to be the clear number one guy. I also think when it comes to touchdowns, DK Metcalf is going to be the guy. He is the big physical receiver that's the cheat code against the secondary. I think he's going to be the primary red zone target, as we saw last year. But do you think the running game takes away too many of those touchdowns? Are there any of these receiver bets that you like?
Yeah, I really like the over for DK Metcalf that you were talking about. And slightly juiced to the under, minus 115. I don't care. 1,025 and a hook. I like the over. And sure, they could always hand it off more because they kind of had that two-headed monster in the background or in the backfield with Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet. But, man, if you look at DK Metcalf, he's hit this number in 3 of his last 4 seasons. He hit it last year in 16 games. And also, I think when you look at that offensive line, I think that's really crucial, and it's a crucial part of this handicap as well, because that offensive line was really banged up last year. And so Geno Smith didn't nearly get the time that he normally gets to throw the football, which is why his numbers dipped a little bit last season as opposed to the season before. So if that line stays healthy, he's going to have more time to throw. DK Metcalf is in the prime of his career, and they're going to have a new OC who loved to throw it around at Washington. We saw how good that Huskies offense was last year in college football. Now, will that translate to the NFL? That's one of those questions that you really won't know until you see it on the field. But I think this number is low for DK Metcalf, and he is the guy when it comes to that very talented receiving core. So I would go over.
Okay, so it feels like you're pretty high on the Seahawks. It doesn't sound like you think that they're going to win the Super Bowl. But do you think there's any way that they contend for the division here? Because obviously the Niners look amazing on paper. But I've heard, some rumblings of it's very tough to mentally stay on the same track when you've been in postseason contention for quite some time. They're having some contract issues with Trent Williams. Do you think any of these teams, I guess it's not just the Seahawks, when you look at the odds, obviously the Niners are huge favorites to win the division. Are the Seahawks one of those teams that could possibly at least give the Niners a scare when they play them head-to-head?
I think they could give them a scare, yeah. And I think maybe at plus 750, they're worth a small sprinkle, to win the NFC West. That's a lot of value, I think, for a team that, look, the Niners are, without question, the class of the NFC, not just the division. But I will say, when you look at the fact that Christian McCaffrey has an injury history that you always have to be concerned about, especially if you're talking about fantasy drafts. Was healthy last year, but that's kind of an anomaly for him. Trent Williams is holding out. Brandon Ayuk is unhappy. The Niners are too good for things to fall apart. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I am saying it is difficult to replicate the sort of success that they had last season going to the Super Bowl. So I think there's a possibility they're not as good this year. And if things break the wrong way, then why not put some money on a team that you like? Again, I'm not saying the Seahawks are some sort of playoff team, but they went 9-8 last year, and I know schedule strength matters. I think they're a better team this year, so I really like over 7.5 as their win total. I like that they brought in Mike McDonald. I like that they brought in a new OC who was with the Huskies last year, and I think that getting to 8 is very doable, and I don't mind a sprinkle on the division. I don't.
I think for me, the handicap is the Seahawks have a relatively high floor but low ceiling. Like,
Yeah.
I think they're a team that's pretty dependable. It's similar to what I think of Geno Smith. You know, he's not going to lose the game for you. And I think the same could be said for the Seahawks as a whole. I think they will be competitive in divisional games, as we've seen in the past. It's just, I think the defense is holding them back a bit, but I do think the offense can at least sling it. And they're a pass-heavy offense. So even if they get down in games, they have the capability of hanging around, or at least coming back, to make it competitive with some of these other clubs in the NFC West. So we'll see about the Niners. I think maybe this division is more exciting than it has been in the past. Like we did the Cardinals yesterday. I think they're going to be much better. The Rams have Matt Stafford. They always have a shot there. But I think it will be very interesting what we see from the Niners this season, because last year, I think we saw their humanity when Deebo Samuel went down. So that's the thing about the Niners is they have so many really solid players that almost feel irreplaceable if any of them go down. And right now, looking at Trent Williams, you know, their best offensive lineman, if he holds out, I don't know, maybe the Niners are ripe for the picking in the NFC West, which seems very blasphemous. But Jenks, is there anything else with the Seahawks team that you think people should know about? Any X factors, any other bets that you like? Because most of them are pretty long shot, you know, to win the NFC 30-1, win the Super Bowl 80-1. What about making the playoffs? Do you think this is a playoff team? Because if you do, it's plus 185.
That's interesting. Here's the thing. I think this division is going to be much improved. The Niners are good. I think the Rams had a really good offseason. I think the Seahawks had a really good offseason. So I don't know. This is tough. Because remember, this is a squad last year that won 9 games, still missed the playoffs. So they can still get to 8 and eclipse that win total and still miss the postseason. I sort of think I would stick with, even though it's a little juicy, I would go over 7.5. But I will say, I definitely like it. It's more likely to make the playoffs at plus 185 than winning the division. That's definitely a long shot. But my big worry, I think, overall is because of the depth of this division outside of the Cardinals, this is a division that could kind of beat up on each other even during the regular season. And yes, the Niners are the class, but the Niners will get beat by someone in the division. They're not going to go 17-0.